Hello and welcome to this webinar on the Department of Energy Small Business Innovative Research and STTR program. Thank you for joining. I hope that this time will be valuable for you. That's my goal. So I'm going to move right into this. Our outline for today looks like a little bit of background on the program, which I've gone through before, but might be helpful. Changes to the program for DOE, the new Phase I application process, some strategies that I've come up with to maximize your Phase I invitation. So realize you do have to get a Phase I proposal invitation. This is a pitch that you're turning in. Some of the resources that we have. And then I put a bunch of appendices in here to help you understand the context of these topics that are in the SBIR STTR release. Hopefully you can work from those and understand some of the complexities that I saw. A little bit of background on the program. As you know, it started in 1977. As you see, it ran through a lot of reauthorizations into different years, and we finally got to this reauthorization now in the RAMP Act, and that's where we are now with a new one. The Congress and Responsibilities, the Congressional Reauthorization Act came through that provided congressional direction. That was signed, in April, I think. Then the Small Business Act, it actually has been edited and changed. The SBA still, to my knowledge, has not put out an SBIR STTR policy directive that directs all the agencies as to how they can implement the program. And there are agency-specific regs and procedures. The Genesis stakeholder program, it programs stakeholders. This is kind of interesting. I've done these webinars for quite a few years, as many of you know. I think this might be the most challenging that I've done. Maybe the AFWorks one, trying to explain it, was challenging too. But this one is especially challenging in that there just seems to be a lot of people engaged in this, a lot of stakeholders. It all began with the White House Executive Order 14363. Then the Department of Energy, through the Office of Undersecretary for Science, is the one who has to execute the executive order. Interestingly enough, there was a FOA that came out early this year, of which there are 278 awardees, which is kind of interesting because they're very much aligned with what these topics in the SBIR STTR program are. And then most everything has been outsourced to ConnectWorks, which is a section of ATI, the consortium. In addition to that, there's another consortium now, the Genesis Mission Consortium. So it sure appeared to me there are a lot of cooks in this particular kitchen, and then you're going to add yourself as a proposer to the program. So I'm hoping that what we go through here will help you a little bit. There's some changes to the program. Obviously, the program used to reside in the Office of Science. And I will say that these charts, when you get them in a PDF form, if you click on those, it'll take you to the source on the web so you can see where the source came from. Here's the revised organization. It is now in the Office of Technology Commercialization. I think that word means something. I think what that means is that commercialization is a key ingredient here. I did make some attempt to compare the two organizations, and I gave up. Anyway, the new Phase I application process. Let's talk through that a little bit. Now you're submitting a short elevator pitch. Each company can submit 3. There is a template that's available from DOE. It's basically a Word document that just has the requirements in it. Then DOE is going to screen that, give you pass-fail, to decide whether to invite you to submit a Phase I proposal. The details of which have not been released yet. Then that full application, as I say, is to be determined. There will be a Phase I award, which they say is typically the proof of concept, like a traditional Phase I, typically 6 to 12 months. And then it will be what is referred to as a go, no-go Phase II. So DOE is going to assess technical progress, commercial potential to determine Phase II. Now the pitch is due September the 10th, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. That's the pitch. Now, ultimately, what's going to happen to get to Phase II, and this is kind of interesting, the process to get to Phase II, and I'm quoting from the DOE transcript, an entirely new application, a new proposal process to apply for Phase II. Move between phases via a go, no-go decision point. At that point, there'll be some evaluation requirements. So think like a Phase II plan or a commercialization pitch, go, no-go decision point based on those materials that they will receive. So what I would say is it's a little bit up in the air right now, is exactly how the Phase I winners are going to be moved into Phase II or not moved into Phase II. But we're not there today. We're at the pitch. So let's talk about that. Once again, that page is linked to the source document. The program, the overall Phase I STTR SBIR for DOE launch is about 40 awards is what's anticipated, $110 million. Pitch deadline, as I said, is the 10th. There are 4 different general areas in which you're bidding. This is an initial release. DOE does say there are more topics expected later this year. Now, there's some things you need to consider and get going right away. This AMP is, you need that access in order to be able to apply. That portal, as of this moment, is not active. So you need to keep getting back to that because you've got to get into AMP in order to be able to submit, but you can't get into it today. You need to start your registrations. Hopefully you don't need to do that. I hope you've already done this, that you've got your UAI from SAM and those kind of things, because if you don't have them by now, you're probably not going to be able to bid. And then you draft your pitch and put it into, it is done in a PDF document that's sent in. You can do up to 3 pitches per company across the topic areas. If you don't get a pitch, you're not going to be able to apply to Phase I. The topic that you will get between the pitch and the full application, you have to execute the topic, you have to get with them and get invited to the topic to submit the full application. You will get a confirmation by email that your submission has been submitted. The eligibility criteria, as you know, is pretty much the same. You have to qualify as an SBC as defined by the SBA, and there's a requirements, generally 500 or fewer employees, although, as many of you probably know, this is related to your NAICS code. So most of you have nothing to worry about here, but at the same time, I think it is valuable to look at that. And that table right there is linked to the source document, so you can go look at the NAICS codes and make sure that the code that you're operating under, that you meet the size standards so that you can bid this thing. The Phase I specific requirements, as you can see, the primary employment of a principal investigator has to be with the SPC, spend more than 50% in total employment hours with them. For an STTR, it can be with either one. I'm not going to read through all this. It's pretty much what you've seen before. There's not a whole lot different here than has been published before, but there are some specific requirements that you have to do. Now, what's the Phase I funding path? New entrants apply through Phase I. Later phases are tied to DOE approval and so forth. So Phase I, once you submit your pitch, get invited to Phase I, then Phase I is $250K for feasibility proof of concept. Phase II is up to $2 million for prototype and demonstration. And once again, the exact gate to get between Phase I and Phase II is to be determined. Then there is a second Phase II, which is called a Roman numeral 2.2, and that's continued development. It's sort of like a crosswalk with what used to be Phase IIA and Phase IIB. Phase IIA being to continue your research, Phase IIB meaning commercialization. Then the Strategic Breakthrough Award that was in the legislation, up to 4 years, up to $30 million, which you do have to have a 1-to-1 match, and that can be challenging. And then Phase III. And you can skip the Strategic Breakthrough. You can skip the Phase II. You can go from Phase II directly to Phase III. There's not a direct to Phase II path. New participants do have to enter through Phase I. Now, compliance is a big issue, as you know, in the federal government right now, so please be very careful. Prepare for these risk reviews. Make sure your foreign relationships, you understand what they are, cybersecurity, AI review, consent, and so forth. So build that disclosure pack early. Get your stuff in place so that you're not caught off guard when time comes for compliance checks. So I think some of the things you need to do near term, get that AMP access once you can. I mean, as a few minutes ago, you couldn't, but I'm hoping that'll come out soon. Get your pitch narrative together. Lead with the DOE mission fit, technical novelty, and so forth. We'll go through that in greater detail. Build your team, get your PI locked in, a research partner or subcontractor, facility, letters of support, get those early. Get your compliance readiness done to make sure, like it was in the previous slide. And then have a post-award plan, map your Phase I milestones to go, no-go evidence, and a credible Phase II roadmap. You're going to learn a lot more of that as you get into Phase I. So it rewards concise screening evidence first, then milestone discipline after the award. So let's talk a little bit about the strategy to maximize your Phase I invitation. Once again, this is a pitch. Here's the key questions at the pitch stage that you need to answer. These are the questions you need to answer for whichever topic you choose, okay? This is their pitch development guide template, basically an MS Word document. You can see the word count is right there, so you got to be careful with that. There's no font or spacing restrictions that I can see. it does appear you're not able to update any graphics or upload any graphics. It says in there that you may upload a bibliography and references cited document. I question what the advantage of that is. I mean, you decide for yourself. Are they going to read it? I don't know. You can have your own opinion. I would think probably not, although if you've got some wild promises, maybe it would be good to put that in there. But just think that through. I do think you need to consider the evaluator very, very carefully. The evaluation criteria is here. The technical promise, the significance of the problem, advancement or breakthrough, a realistic work plan. So there's a lot that you've got to put in those few 200 words associated with the problem. But I do think you've got to connect this problem to a real world problem. I think you've got to make some note about how you're going to do a work plan and that you're able to manage as well as do the research. Then commercialization potential, what's a value proposition for a customer, which means you need to have a customer in mind. Now, you need to have a customer. What is the use case? This is not just research for the sake of research. You need a use case. You need to identify that now. You need to differentiate yourself from what's out there on the market today. You identify your customer, you identify the problem, and you answer the question, why can't they go buy this at Walmart today, right? And get that down on paper and then get your go-to-market strategy. Your team quals, your expertise, your resource, any alliances you had. They seem to be pressing you to have alliances with national labs. That's not 100% necessary, but at the same time, it is something that has been mentioned. And then what is your revenue growth model? Now, all of these three are equally weighted in regards to the evaluator. They're going to put basically 33% on each one, or 330 points out of 1,000 on each one when they do the evaluation. However, there is one more evaluation criteria that they tossed in called policy factors. And do you align with the policy priorities? Do you align with other research and development? Have you looked at prior DOE award performance and see where you fit with that? It is applicable to new applicants. They do talk about collaboration in this policy factor with the national labs, of which there they are. So those are things that you need to think about as well as you're putting this pitch together. So you can submit a project pitch aligning with the topic in your interest area. However, I think you really need to be careful and realize that some work has already been awarded under a prior FOA. In my opinion, I don't think you should duplicate an existing project. I think you should do your research and propose a project that fills a gap. Go look at the DOE awards, study them carefully. I've got links in here to that. And then assess the gaps and propose a project that fills the gaps. In my opinion, you should not be bidding right on top of something that's already been awarded. Maximizing your probability of win begins with project content selection. That's the key thing in my mind. If you pick the wrong project and they're going, oh, we already did that, you could be out, in my opinion. Now, this is, once again, all this is sort of my opinion, but some work's already been awarded. This is a hot link. If you click on that in the PDF, you will get a list of all the awardees so that you can see and do your research, which is what I did. So let's just go through each of the sections of the pitch content. The first thing, element one, is this layperson overview, how it aligns with your chosen topic area, as well as their mission and priorities. You do need to fast forward to a row use case. That needs to be done really quickly. Realize the executive order and that FOA that were issued do reflect the mission priorities. That's where you're going to find some of these things. So you do need to go read those things. I think, and I can't say for sure, but I think this element one aligns with the policy factor evaluation criteria, because that doesn't apply to any of the others. None of the others apply to this. So by process of elimination, I think that's where it goes. So do you align with DOE's administrative policy priorities, complement other funded activities? Do you have a partnership with a national lab? So these are some of the things that might be on the evaluator's plate as they read these 100 words. This is, once again, this is not precise. This is my estimation of what is going to be used to evaluate the first 100 words. The second 200 words, the overview, the significance, the innovation, the feasibility of what it is that you're proposing. Here's the evaluation criteria. Relate to real world problem or the state-of-the-art ceiling, something that can't be busted through. What are you going to do to get through it? Who cares about it? Who stands to benefit if you're successful? Is there a meaningful advancement or a breakthrough? What's the state-of-the-art you're advancing? A realistic work plan. You need to outline your work plan very briefly. Now, there's no graphics in here, so you can't put a a Gantt chart in. I'm not even sure you can put bulleted list in, although you might get away with that. But how do you outline your work plan very briefly? I think you need to discuss what you're going to do, your budget, your overall schedule, and emphasize the practicality of your work plan, how you're going to produce something at the end of every element of the work plan that you can show to your technical point of contact that you're making progress. I feel very strongly you should follow good systems engineering practices. That is a systems engineering V. If you're not sure what that is, reach out to me later. I will lead you to the INCOSE, International Council of Systems Engineering website where you can see that. But I just think, I think for them to see that you're an engineer and you understand systems engineering is really important. Commercialization potential, another 200 words. Realize this is 1/3 of the evaluation criteria. How does it address a market need? Well, you've got to identify the market need, right? So you've got to do that. How are you going to get to these customers? Believe you address your value proposition, your competitive advantage, your go-to-market strategy. And these are the criteria for that. You've got to identify an end user and a use case. This is not just research for the sake of research. This needs to have a home somewhere. What are the key performance parameters, the criteria that are important to the end user? Talking to an end user, building that relationship with a use case is going to give you that. You need to differentiate yourself from existing solutions. That means you need to do some freedom to operate, that is looking at the existing IP to make sure you're not doing something that's already out there. You need to list your competitive solutions and assert your advantage. You need to, what is your go-to-market? What's your business model? You might want to identify several business models that you would refine over the course of phase 1 and phase 2. You know, are you going to do all the work? Are you going to turn into a manufacturing company, a distribution company, a field support company? Are you going to do all the research that you have to do, all the legal stuff? Well, probably not. But you know, are you going to outsource? Are you just going to protect what you've got via EP and go license EP? Or are you going to outsource manufacturing and follow from there? Whatever it is. But I think in here you need to state that there are various business models that will be refined. And then you need to specify markets and size. So that means you've got to get a use case. You've got to do some market assessments to come up with markets and size. I think say that you will be requesting TABA for phase 1, so you can bring an expert on the team to plan and execute your commercialization strategy, and TechOp is a TABA provider. The team qualifications, once again, this is 1/3 of the points. Outline how you have the technical expertise, commercialization, and strategic partnerships. Notice that commercialization, they want to know you've got commercialization experience. Briefly address the company, any partnerships that you've got, and financials. And here's the evaluation criteria. Your expertise, your relevant technical expertise, your commercialization success stories, and what process you use to get there. Many of you have used TABA in the past. That's a fine process to get to a commercialization success. What strategic alliances do you have? As I mentioned, getting a TABA provider is good for that. Get technology transition partners, get letters of support from them, either an end user or an existing producer of the product. Where are you going to fit in their supply chain? Your revenue growth model. Your revenue growth model should be held up by a DOE Phase II, right? You're putting a project pitch in for phase 1. So you might even want to show, hey, here's where we went in phase 1, here's where we went in phase 2. Depending on what TRL you're going to reach, you might need a phase 2.2 or not, but you need to kind of come up with an estimate of that right off the bat and add any other R&D or investment choices. Now, I thought it would be interesting to figure out where these topics fit within the organization. I did this, and there'll be a big star coming up in a minute that says, watch out, Randy did this. This is not official. But you need to do this. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's pretty easy to see where each of these topics align in the organization. And as you know, DOE actually had some office hours where they had people come up and talk about them. So, and then what you need to look is for each of these areas to see where in that FOA award list was this also covered. Like in the very first one, the biotechnology revolution, there's at least 20 FOA awards that are really aligned with that. They could be teaming partners, they could be competitors, but you should just know about it. And each of these has alignments, as you see right there. I'm not going to read all this. We've got way too many slides for that. I want you to go back and study these slides after we're done. I think you need to align these to the executive order and to the FOA. And these are the executive order talked about 4 major areas. They turned into challenge areas in the Genesis challenge. And here's the SBIR topic reference. Now, once again, I did this, but I think it's pretty reasonable. But you need to understand the executive order, the FOA, make your submission align on these foundational documents. Use their language. Once again, there's my thing to tell you, watch out, it was me. In addition to that, there's a Genesis mission consortium that has been created. So that's interesting, isn't it? They intend to contribute computing power, AI tokens, technical expertise, in-kind support. It doesn't sound like a place that's got any money for you, but at the same time, it is a consortium. I did read somewhere where there could potentially be funding in the future, but not right now. But there is a consortium. As I said, they had the word called future funding calls. There are working groups within the Genesis consortia, of which some are aligned with these topics. So my question is, joining or partnering with a member beneficial to improve your PWAN? I don't know. I think it's worth looking at. You don't know any, and if you click on that graphic, you're going to go to the consortia website so you can understand about that. Okay, so I've put a lot of stuff out there. How can you get some help? Well, one thing that we've done is we've done a lot of topic research, which you're going to see in the appendix here in a minute, for the existing project, how they align with the topics. And I've got this data for each of the topics. For example, in topic 4, achieving AI-driven autonomous labs, there were 5 different buckets of SBIR CTR research, but they all lined up and mapped to what's already been selected. So those are the SBIR topic areas. Over on the left are the selected Genesis project missions that are on contract right now. So some of these are like right spot on. They're a primary fit. Some of them are sort of a secondary fit. And this is just one. As you know, there's a bunch of different topics, and there's a herd of these things that were selected for the Genesis mission project. So some of the things that we offer is for the current round, we can provide some consultation out of this data that we've created to help you select the topic and the project, the specific project within a topic. And what is your scope of work going to be so that you're not overlapping with something that's already done. We're also available to review the pitch prior to submission. We can identify specific individuals within DOE offices and create business relationships. And we can coach your phase 1 proposal team. Once you get an invite, let's assume you get one. I can also coach your project pitch right now to help you get the project pitch in to maximize your probability of win. And then we can identify and capture non-SBIR CTR federal funding as well, which is something that we do outside of the SBIR program that may not be well known, but we do spend a lot of money, a lot of time and effort with a number of clients going after that 96.8% of the federal R&D budget that's outside of SBIR CTR. There is our topic search tool. If you've not entered into this, please go do that. That's a free tool. It's automated. You put your keywords in. Every time topics come out within a few, hours a day, I'm looking at Matt Rose over here, within hours, he says, you're going to get a list of all the relevant topics. And you don't do anything. Just get your stuff loaded in here. So do that. I would suggest you do that. We also have proposal development support. We are a tablet provider. We provide training like this. I do training for this for FAST organizations, for companies. I do it for the state of Virginia, for New York, North Carolina, a lot of different places. And strategic marketing, as I said, the strategic business development work. So here's an appendix. I put your seatbelt on. I'm going to blow through this, but you can go back and look at it. So there is a Genesis mission. It predated all these topics. There's the FOA that came out. The eligible applicants were all kinds of domestic applicants, right? The teaming, they did have specific teaming requirements. You had to include 2 of the following, for example. Awards have been made, and in this appendix, I've got them in there. So the question is, what can you learn from these awards? There are 278 awards. Look at who led those. And there are 342 participating institutions. Look at all those people that are involved in there, 157 companies, 142 universities. I think that's important. Once again, that page is hot linked so you can go to it. What's the genesis of the Genesis mission? Forgive me. It was all these different national science and technology challenges that were put out in the executive order. They do align with the SBIR STTR through these different 4 things. You can see the alignment there. The executive order up there, that's hot linked to the executive order document. I do think it's important that you read that executive order. You click on that, you're going to be able to read it, right? So I think all that's important. Here's the executive order that came out in November of 2025. As you can see, it describes as a national effort to accelerate the application of AI. and the Secretary of Energy is implementing it. And that's the chart I showed you before. Once again, that page is another hot link in case you forgot the hot link on the other page. Here's the SBIR topics that I crosswalked to the FOA awards. I also put the DOE point of contact there. This is Randy. Once again, this is not DOE, this is me, but I think you need to do that. So the focus areas that are in SBIR that were covered, a lot of them were covered very well, as you can see that I put in this little chart. There are potential gaps between what is asking the SBIR program now and what was awarded before. Now, in all honesty, I went and did some AI work to try to identify some gaps. Please don't hold me to these gaps. You know more about this than you are. I wouldn't recognize a genotype if he walked in the room. So you've got to do your homework on this. I'm just giving you some ideas, okay? Now, the next chart is more than ideas. I went to the August 5th transcript of the DOE office hours, and Carrie said an example could be, and it was in the transcript. So I just made a list right here. This is exactly what was said by DOE for this first topic, okay? Repeat for the second topic. There's the coverage by focus area. There's the possible gaps that I came up with, or my friend did. And here's the actual words that were said in the transcript by David Radson about things they were looking for. We're very interested in algorithms for scientific applications that will run on fault-tolerant quantum computers and eventually fully error-corrected quantum. Do you see? So they specifically asked for this. One thing I did not do is cross-walk what they said they wanted with what they've already awarded. Let's hope that they did that in their head. All right, here's the third one. Here's the coverage by focus area. Here's the potential gaps that you could possibly cover. And once again, here's some examples from the DOE office hour, okay, for you. So this is right out of the words, right out of the mouth of Adam Kinney. And here's number 4, the focus areas, once again, and the office hour examples and the possible gaps. I got those backwards, but that's okay. So I just think it's just really, really critical for you to pick the right topic in order to be able to do this. I'm not even at 3:30 yet. Amazing. Boy, I can talk fast, can I? We got questions coming in. Yes, exactly. What that initial pitch, you have to submit an initial pitch. It needs to hit the evaluation criteria. The most common mistakes from a technically strong company that's going, and answering a question that's been put in the chat. The most common mistake that's going to be put in by a technically strong company in this project pitch is they're going to beat your chest about their technology and never connect it with the real world. Secondly, the second biggest mistake they're going to make is they're never going to even remember to look at the evaluation criteria and use any of those words. Those are the two biggest mistakes. So once a company is invited to submit a full application, what's to distinguish them from in this new program? The evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria that I showed you there earlier that are used for the pitch are the same evaluation criteria that will be used for the Phase I full proposal. At least that's what it says today. So the evaluation criteria are key. They have changed. This whole Genesis mission floats over the whole thing. The evaluation criteria, the overall large emphasis that the Genesis mission has on harnessing AI to benefit the country and improve our security and all that business. I think these kind of things are going to float over the whole thing. So I think that's going to be really important. And I think distinguishing a winning proposal is being able to connect the dots with some of the real keys and also being able to hit the evaluation criteria. Moving toward a single entry application, go, no go. So the question is, how do you lay out your Phase I to prepare yourself for the later go, no go decision points for Phase II? I'll be a lot better able to answer that when we do the webinar for the full Phase I proposal. Right now, all we have is a project pitch. I do think in the project pitch that you need to put up a statement in there that covers all 3 or 4 or 5, ever how many phases you think it's going to take to get to TRL 7 or 8 or 9. So I think you need to cover all that now to talk about what you would do in phase 2, if you would need a phase 2.2, which I don't know that you can decide that today. I mean, you submitted the project pitch yet, but I think you should put all that in there and describe it. But basically to lay out what in the project pitch is going to help you win phase 1. To get to phase 2, what's going to be in that phase 1 proposal. When we do that webinar, I promise I'll answer that in spades. I don't have much to go on right now. Okay, there's a question about this company is commercializing technology from a national lab. That means, I guess, they've licensed the technology, licensed the patent, and also using university research to mature and validate the underlying science. How should a company with that profile position the respective roles of the small business, the lab, and the research partners to see a small commercialization company? Well, first of all, you've got to have some sort of written agreement with the owner of the intellectual property as to who is going to benefit when the project and the topic goes into a commercial product or a service. That is the absolute number one biggest hangup. A university or a national lab and you negotiating that so the DOE can see, oh, these people have thought it through. They're the license is going to either be bought firm fixed price for this amount and they're going to walk away, or there's going to be some percentage of revenue. But that all needs to be laid out now. Now, is it laid out in finality? Because no, probably not, because you've not won this award, right? And you may not have the R&D funds to actually move forward unless you get this award. But I think there needs to be some basic understanding, like a memorandum of understanding. But it needs to be signed by everybody so the DOE can see that the small business is the one that's increased the gross national product, right? It's not the national lab, it's not the university necessarily, but it's a small business who is going to produce, sell, license this product, hire people, and increase the gross national product. So get something in writing right now. That's really, really important. If you were helping prepare for a phase 1, what evidence or accomplishment would you want to have in hand before submitting the initial pitch? Most valuable for materially increasing probability. For DOE, there's just, for lack of a better term, there's this aroma of NSF coming off of this thing to me, which starts to make academic criteria, your resume, your publications seem, at least in my mind, they have a little bit more weight than they might have had before. So I think being able to say that we have a subject matter expert in this arena is really important. I also think that if you've got any existing relationships with labs or with other businesses that stand to profit if you're successful, stand to make some growth in the industry if you're successful, that's good to represent that as well. But I just get a feeling they're going to be looking at this principal investigator very, very, very carefully. And they're going to be looking at your company to see if you can manage work. But I think that's going to be secondary to what they think the principal investigator can contribute. So that's my opinion. I think that's going to be really, really important. Okay. Well, I'm a couple minutes over. What the heck? I've only got 2 more slides. Do you mind if I'm going to throw a couple things to you that are kind of goofy a little bit. This comes from my days of working at Shipley Associates when we were really involved heavily in page layout for proposals. And there's some subtle hints. I mean, everybody's going to submit a proposal, right? Yeah, I think font is a big deal. There's no requirement for font, by the way. I mean, you could use Times New Roman 10 compressed, right, and make it where people had to pull their magnifying glass out to read it. Or you could pick a font that looks like it's really comfortable and feels good. I know this is all gushy, but I do believe that if you do something that's a little bit different, it stands out, you never know. I mean, I think it's worth it. I think paragraph style matters too. Contemplate justified text. It's sometimes People will say it's a little more difficult to read because the cadence of your brain trying to read across the page. There's not a lot of words. I understand that, but I'm just telling you to think about that. And some spacing to the line spaces increases readability as well. So here's some ideas. Formatting does have subtle impressions. When someone opens a document and sees a section, like this is the same section in 3 different formats. And when you get it, you can make it bigger and see. But, you can look at the section and go, oh, well, that's, Times New Roman, justified text. That's a little harder to read. Look in the middle. That's Georgia font. It's got a box around it. It sort of jumps out at you. I don't know. Make up your own mind. But what I'm telling you is take your time to design for ease of readability. We do offer consulting in this area. You can do your research. I just think you need to take advantage of every potential benefit for your submission, because when all else is equal, the feel of that page could be the difference. It was easily read, easily digested. I didn't open it up and gag because it was Times New Roman 10 compressed, justified text, not even a bold word in there. And I was like, oh no, I got to read all this. Do something to make it stand out. That's just my suggestion. So there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. We offer a considerable amount of gratis consultation with folks. I know that you're not in a position of asking for TABA at this point. I do think that it's important to mention it in your commercialization strategy. DOE is offering it, and it's extra. So I think that you really need to say, yes, we're going to take advantage of that. I do think that will be beneficial in the selection of the Phase I invitations. So this is Randy Simpson in Blacksburg. I hope this has been helpful for you. It's been really challenging to put together. Feel free to email me, ask questions. We'll get these slides out. I would encourage you to study, do your homework. Please don't bid on something that there are already 3 people doing the exact same thing. Okay? Thank you for your time. I'm going to sign off now. No more questions? No more questions. We're good. Thank you again, and have a good rest of your day and a nice weekend.